We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is
Charles Leclerc in F2 2017, Charles Leclerc in Ferrari 2019, Charles Leclerc in Sauber 2018, Charles Leclerc in Ferrari 2020, and then 2021, 2022, and 2023. Notice how the longer this guy stays in Ferrari, the more he looks like he's gonna kill himself. Charles Leclerc's facial expressions are how I personally determine how good Ferrari is. If he pulls this face, this means the team is okay. But when he pulls this face, this means the team is fucking dog shit. And he pulls this face like 90% of the time. Sadness is the only emotion Charles seems to have. At least until now. 2024 marks the year he finally knows how to smile, ladies and gentlemen. Consistently too. A lot of people don't understand how big of a deal this is. Guys, a Ferrari driver is actually happy for once. This smile right here was brought to you by Ferrari and how they have been absolutely cooking this season. Holy shit! They may not be cooking as hard as Red Bull or McLaren, but at least they're doing something. Race engineers are super responsive. Their drivers finally win races. Team strategies make sense. The team principal actually knows what the fuck he's doing, and pit stops don't break people's legs anymore.
Oh no!
Oh no, Kimi Raikkonen out and has hit one of the mechanics for the second time this weekend.
Finally, after years of watching F1, we're actually witnessing Ferrari be a good team again. My goodness, this comeback took so long. By the way guys, if I do end up jinxing it in this video and Ferrari burns to the ground, I am sorry. But at the same time, not really, because it would be pretty funny if that happened. But let's just focus on how Ferrari drivers have actually been happy the past couple of months. I mean, just take a look at Carlos Sainz. That is not the face of someone who's gonna be jobless next year. And then take a look at Charles. He finally looks like he has a soul. And then take a look at his brother too, Oscar Piastri Leclerc. He's also happy. To understand just how big of a feat this is, you have to realize just how horrifying Ferrari has been the past 15 years. Here is a list I found just earlier today on Reddit of Ferrari's fuck-ups in the first 3 races of 2023. Notice how I'm just showing the part of the list that's talking about Bahrain and it already takes up the entire screen. I swear there are things I didn't even know about on this list. Charles's helmet cam was mounted upside down. FP1 5838 on F1 TV. Sainz's car bounces too much. Team radio says we are checking.
Okay, yeah, checking.
And Xavi forgot to tell Leclerc to push under the safety car to cover Hamilton's pit stop.
Try to push from safety car line 1 for Hamilton. He just beat it.
Xavi, you need to tell me that before.
Copy.
No, but come on.
These are things that make Ferrari an endless nightmare for all of their drivers, you know, especially Charles, who was screwed so hard by Ferrari strategies that he gets actual nightmares about going into the pits.
Ah oui, ça te revient.
Oui, oui.
Ok.
Mais je dormais et je me suis réveillé dans un cauchemar.
Et t'as crié
Box, box.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy.
Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy.
Oh, no, no, no.
Yeah, boy. 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 Yeah, boy.
No, 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 no.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy.
It's hard to reach your goals when your teams are pulled in too many directions. With Asana,
Hi everyone, welcome to the background role now to add then again text underscore and then make it big like this text. Again tap onto text and choose one element like this which is underscore and then make it big like like this text. Again tap onto text and choose one element like this, which is underscore, and then make it big like this. Now overlay the text over the first text that you just added like this. Now here you can see there is the background added to your text, and from here you can also change the color of the background. To add background to the text, simply tap onto the text button right here, then again tap onto the and then tap onto right. Now finally, to add the background to your text, again tap onto text and choose one element like this, which is underscore, and then make it big like this. Now overlay the text over the first text that you just added.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah. Yeah, boy. 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 Yeah, boy.
Hey there, Paige here with Clipchamp, and in this.com where you can and then heading over here and clicking on the plus button into your timeline. So you can either speed up your entire video or only one section of it. To speed up the whole video, click on the video in your timeline and then head up to the very top of the editor and you'll see the speed button. Click on that and then select fast, and now you can go ahead and change the speed of your video by dragging the toggle anywhere between 2x and 16x speed controls. The closer to 16x, the faster your video will be. Your video length will also adjust and it will become shorter in your timeline. To speed up only one section of your video, you'll use the snipping tool to cut your clip. Just click on the video and then move your cursor to where you want the split to start. Click on the scissors icon to split, and then repeat the process for where you want the split to end. And now your video is in 3 parts. I'm going to repeat that and make one more split to really show how you can utilize the speed effect. And I'll also just trim this last bit here. Now click on the clip that you want to speed up. In this case, it's these two.
In today's video, your editors are already can really locate one of your existing projects. Go to your editor where you can make your adjustments, streamline your editing efforts, saving you both time and timeline at the bottom where your video clips are displayed. Click on the specific video in the timeline that you want to speed up. This action selects the clip, enabling you to edit it directly.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy.
no.
Yeah, boy. Boy. Yeah, boy.
No.
That's why.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked.
If you're a small YouTuber and your videos are getting 0 views, this 2-minute hack will change everything.
The reason your videos aren't getting many views isn't because your content is bad, it's because your titles probably suck. I see it all the time. Small YouTubers like you putting hours and hours into editing great videos only to sabotage yourself at
Here's a quick trick to get your YouTube Shorts more views. On TikTok, covers or thumbnails don't really matter, but on YouTube, Shorts are being shown on a shelf. That's a tongue twister. The problem is that YouTube doesn't allow you to upload your own thumbnail, forcing you to choose from your video. So instead,
as I've said a million times. The video itself, yes, it matters, but it only matters after someone clicks. And right now, the reason you're not getting views is because people aren't clicking. It's not that the algorithm hates you. It's just that the people the algorithm's trying to show your video to simply aren't interested in it. But look, overall, your mission at this stage is simple. Don't obsess over perfection. Obsess over clickability. Your title and thumbnail are your handshake, like your first impression. Nail those 2 things and you'll start building exposure. Now, I do have a short mastery course dedicated to titles and thumbnails, so if this is something you need to, which is where a lot of small creators go horribly wrong. But the one rule I always share with small creators is you need to make at least 100 videos. Not just for practice, which is still a huge aspect of which we'll talk about next, but also because every single upload you ever post is feeding the algorithm valuable information. You stay
tired of having to stream in 720p in StreamYard or having to pay more to get 1080p quality? We got you.
Consistent long enough for the algorithm to truly understand you. Like, can you survive the quiet phase before the compounder kicks in? Because most people think that, which is completely possible for each and every one of you watching right now. Here goes a simple 4-step plan that you can take away with you and start implementing right away. Step 1. redefine what success means for you. So firstly, look, stop obsessing over views, likes, and subscribers. I know it's tempting to check your analytics every hour, but those metrics don't reflect your true potential, especially early on. Instead, all small channels need to shift their focus to skill building and content improvement. Like I said, every video is a chance to improve by at least 1%. Maybe it's your pacing, maybe it's your delivery, maybe it's your thumbnail. Like, those tiny wins compound fast. So write this down now. Like, seriously, grab a piece of paper and ask yourself this question. What does true YouTube success look like for me? Is it financial freedom? Is it a full-time content career? Is it a platform to teach or inspire people? Like, once you've defined that, once you've figured it out, every single video you make from now on becomes a step towards your own definition of success, not just numbers on a screen. Step 2, connect with other small channels. Like, you don't have to do this alone. Find and engage with other small creators in your niche. Comment on their videos, message them, share what you're learning, ask questions, offer support. Like, this isn't just about being nice, it's about building a community of people on the same journey. And building these connections can lead to collabs that grow both audiences, accountability that keeps you consistent, shared lessons that save you time and frustration, and most importantly, they'll remind you that you're not the only one grinding in silence, like, you're all in it together. Step 3, find your unique angle. Like, why should someone watch you instead of watching another channel do the same thing? That's a question you need to answer. Like, what's your edge? Maybe it's your storytelling, your humor, your background, your format, your editing style, or maybe it's just your unique perspective on a particular topic. Like, there's so much content out there, but your goal should be to stand out without trying to be someone else. Ask yourself these questions and note down the answers as well. What do you do differently? What value can you provide that most creators can't? And what's something that only you can provide to this niche? And finally, step 4, commit to a consistent posting strategy. So
Yom. Yom. Alright, slow her down. Take the corner.
Look. Look.
Woo! On X Games mode.
Look, my screen share. Are you looking at my screen share?
Yes.
Okay, look. Am I good?
I can do that.
What percentage did you get?
Oh no. Wait, I'll check after this. It's the actual app, not the... Oh my god.
This moment that he knew he fucked.
Teal.
What?
Don't just post random like Valorant videos. Actually make them like good quality. And if you post bad quality Valorant videos, then that is gonna like be detrimental to the Fortnite videos I post.
Okay.
So either just stop posting or actually like make them good quality and like search up how to name them. So like, and use the right hashtags and stuff.
Okay. Go get Osu.
Oh, okay, let's play MX Spikes. Are we gonna play MX Spikes?
I don't know.
Come on, yes or no?
No, I want to play Osu.
The Drivers' Championship table only tells part of the story in Formula 1. So every season, we create our own ranking of how well each driver did given their machinery. This is not about rating how good we think the drivers are in terms of their overall ability, it simply reflects how they did across the 2025 season based on us being trackside and in the paddock for every single race, qualifying and free practice session. So here's our ranking in reverse order, and remember to let us know what you think in the comments. 21st, Jack Doohan. Just as in 2024, Doohan is ranked last primarily thanks to circumstances with only 6 Grand Prix and 2 sprints in which to make an impression for Alpine. There were genuine flashes of speed, but also too many mishaps, notably the crash on the first lap in the wet in Australia, his Suzuka Friday practice turn 1 shunt, and several collisions. With a longer stint in the car, he had the potential to score points and trouble teammate Pierre Gasly. 20th, Franco Colapinto. His late entry into the action after 6 races, a tricky and uncompetitive Alpine, and the long months when his future was uncertain made for a painfully tough season for Colapinto. He failed to score any points and had a difficult time in his initial run of races after a needless shunt in Q1 on his first outing at Imola. But from the 14th race of the year in Hungary onwards, he made good solid progress and sporadically compared well to teammate Gasly on pace, although he ended the season with an average deficit of 0.3 of a second in qualifying. However, after his Brazil crash, his earlier troubles with combination braking and turning corner entries held him back, but this was at least a foundation year for 2026. 19th, Yuki Tsunoda. How different Tsunoda's season might have been if he'd stayed at Racing Bulls, where he made a strong start, instead of being promoted to Red Bull. That notion certainly didn't escape his notice. Once alongside Max Verstappen at Red Bull, he struggled badly. There were sparks of form, but for much of the season he found it difficult to find a balance between qualifying and race pace. Despite the moments where he looked to be getting somewhere, 5 times dipping under the 0.3 deficit to Verstappen threshold in qualifying, the progress was never sustained. Probably the key turning point was the Imola Q1 crash on his first lap, having gained spec equivalents to Verstappen, which put him on the back foot for a long time in terms of available upgrades. His feeble return of 30 points compared to Verstappen's 385 in their time together paints a grim picture. 18th, Lance Stroll. Stroll blamed the Aston Martin's lack of performance as the reason for his lack of results, but objectively, he consistently failed to extract the maximum from it. As he said, if you don't have downforce, you don't do well, but he only outqualified teammate Fernando Alonso once in the China sprint and was on average a quarter of a second off. A fortuitous 6th place in the Australia season opener was the high point, but his season is best described as competent but unremarkable, with too many occasions where he appeared to lose interest. He ended with just 1 point in the final 9 events. 17th, Liam Lawson. Once Lawson re-established himself at Racing Bulls after his shock demotion from Red Bull Racing after just 2 events, he still only sporadically showed what he was capable of. At his best, he put together strong weekends that, if delivered more regularly, would put him in the upper reaches of our ranking. Austria and Azerbaijan, where he bagged his 2 top 6 finishes of the season, stand out. He was also impressive in Monaco, Hungary, Brazil and Austin. The trouble is, his underlying pace was usually just off teammate Isaac Hadjar's, with an average qualifying deficit of just over 1/10.5, and there were too many errors and weekends where qualifying let him down. His form improved after mid-season changes to the suspension geometry to give him improved feel, which allowed him to hold on to the seat for 2026, when he must up his hit rate. 16th, Esteban Ocon. Ocon delivered a number of classy race drives during 2025, but fundamentally his struggles in qualifying compared to Haas teammate Ollie Behrman made life difficult for him, with an average deficit of 0.140 seconds. There were times when he complained about braking problems, which were down to his preferences and limitations rather than car issues. Only in Abu Dhabi, where he suddenly put the car into Q3 for only the 3rd time in 2025 after an overnight overhaul, did he feel his mystery problem had been eliminated. He also couldn't tolerate the same level of rear instability as Behrman, meaning there were times he had to back off the front wing and sacrifice front-end grip. 15th, Gabriel Bortoleto. There was much to be impressed with from Gabriel Bortoleto in 2025, and he's right to take pride in a strong rookie season. He measured up well compared to Sauber teammate Nico Hülkenberg when the Sauber was at its worst. Then once the car improved, with a series of floor updates, he bagged 3 points finishes in 4 events, including his high watermark of 6th at the Hungaroring. At that point, he was tracking for a far higher ranking, but after the August break he didn't kick on as hoped. There were only a couple of points finishes, 8th at Monza and 10th in Mexico, with painful errors at Interlagos and at the start in Las Vegas, the lows. It was a good first season and he has a bright future, but not quite the year it was once shaping up to be. 14th, Lewis Hamilton. This was unquestionably Lewis Hamilton's worst season in Formula 1. Even taking into account the challenge of adapting to a new team and Ferrari's struggles, it was well below the standards you'd expect from the 7-time world champion. But it wasn't without highlights, notably his famous sprint race win on his 2nd race start for Ferrari in China. There were also stretches where his pace stacked up decently against the quicker Charles Leclerc, although on average he was 3.6 places behind in qualifying across the season. The year ended on a low with a run of dismal weekends where his demeanour made it very clear he'd lost all hope. After being eliminated in the first segment of qualifying for the 4th time in succession in Abu Dhabi, he admitted to feeling a lot of anger at the situation. However, despite desperately needing to improve next season, he at least managed to produce enough clean and consistent race drives to amass a reasonable points tally, albeit only just under 2/3 of what Leclerc achieved. But being a solid backup driver isn't what he's there for. 13th, Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg flipped the script on his reputation as a qualifying specialist by making Sundays his strongest suit for the majority of the season, until he got to grips with the car in qualifying trim later on. He ended the year neck and neck with teammate Bortoleto in terms of qualifying performance, but was the more effective race driver overall, scoring 73% of Sauber's points. The high point was his remarkable wet weather podium at Silverstone, but there was plenty of good supporting work as he bagged 9 points finishes. Hülkenberg wasn't the most consistent driver in 2025, and his one-lap struggles for much of the year meant that plenty of decent race drives yielded only lower midfield results. But overall, he spearheaded the Sauber team's much-needed return to credibility effectively. 12th, Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli's season ended strongly, which is what you always want to see from a rookie. However, overall it was a patchy campaign in which it took him longer than expected to make an impact. Although he took an early sprint race pole in Miami, he needed time to get on top of how hard to push in qualifying. The Mercedes misstep with the rear suspension upgrade introduced at Imola in May, which particularly hurt Antonelli's aggressive driving style, interrupted his progress mid-season and led to a loss of confidence. But after Mercedes binned the rear suspension update, he picked back up, particularly from the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in September onwards. Strong late-season performances at Interlagos, where he finished 2nd after holding off the charging Max Verstappen, and Las Vegas, where he was 3rd, demonstrated he'd got to the level expected. It just took a little longer than hoped. Today's video is brought to you by Rovo, Workflow Solutions and Intelligent Gets. Get started at ROV Behrman. Behrman's searing speed was never in doubt, but the first half of the season was too often a story of that not translating into results. Sometimes that was down to external factors, but there were also mistakes, shunting in the Silverstone pit lane under red flag conditions the worst of them. However, Behrman's trajectory was impressive. He used the August break to re-evaluate and take a step forward in how he approached putting together race weekends, which paid dividends. It was that progression that marked him out. Fourth place in Mexico was the high point, but the fact he scored points 6 times in the 10 races after the break showed how much more effective he became at translating that pace into results. He also showed a high tolerance for rear-end instability, a key marker of a driver with a very high ceiling, and advanced his case for a Ferrari promotion somewhere down the line. 10th, Pierre Gasly. Gasly toiled heroically with the recalcitrant Alpine during 2025, making the most of it when it was at its best, which wasn't often, and dragging it to flattering heights in qualifying even when it was at its worst, reaching Q3 11 times. Other than a spell in the autumn when he struggled, which he put down to an underperforming floor, he usually got the most out of limited machinery. He only scored points 7 times, with 6 at Silverstone on a weekend where he performed outstandingly well, the highlight. For the most part, the races were hard work given the car's lack of long-run pace. That Doohan and Colapinto failed to score a point in the second Alpine highlights how good a job Gasly did in 2025's worst car. 9th, Alex Albon. Albon's season was badly lopsided, with the final third of the year yielding a paltry 3 points and Williams teammate Carlos Sainz in the ascendancy. However, we can't let recency bias distort the picture of what was overall still a good season, and a glance at the race's driver rankings across the year reveals how strong he was for much of 2025 before the alarming decline. His haul of 7 points finishes in the first 8 Grand Prix form the bedrock of Williams' successful bid for 5th in the Constructors' Championship, and overall he contributed 53% of Williams' points. The big question is whether his troubles in the back end of the year were just a blip or a reflection of a centre of gravity shift towards Sainz in the team. 8th, Carlos Sainz. Sainz's best work in 2025 was outstanding, and his consistency improved as the year progressed. While it didn't take him long to adapt to the Williams and deliver good pace, by his own admission he did take time to reacclimatise to life in F1's midfield, and there were numerous weekends where his underlying speed was strong, but the results didn't come. The podiums in Azerbaijan and Qatar were the obvious highlights, and overall the final third of the season showcased his best work. But for the patchy first half of the year, where he hit plenty of bad luck but also often didn't execute the weekends as he should have done, he'd have been ranked significantly higher. By the end of the season there were signs he'd asserted himself over Albon. 7th, Isack Hadjar. Hadjar's rookie season started catastrophically with a formation lap crash in Australia, but overall couldn't have gone much better. He ended the year as the top rookie, with promotion to Red Bull Racing for 2026 sealed. His third place at Zandvoort and point scoring record were impressive, but probably the most eye-catching aspect of the year was his consistency in qualifying. He was only eliminated twice in Q1, with only the top 5 in the championship eclipsing that hit rate. He comfortably outperformed teammate Liam Lawson, only being beaten by him 6 times in 27 attempts and outscoring him 51 points to 38, even after having more than his fair share of bad luck in races. 6th, Fernando Alonso. Despite turning 44, Alonso continued to be Aston Martin's foundation. Although it took him until the 9th weekend of the season to score, misfortune played a part in that. Monaco, where an ERS problem cost him a good result, is totemic of this. However, once he started scoring, he proved adept at making the most of the Aston Martin on its competitive weekends, particularly after the first major upgrade was introduced at Imola in May. He wasn't error-free, notably spinning away places in the Qatar Grand Prix, but if age has in any way dulled his edge, it's not by much. 5th, Oscar Piastri. Judged on the first 2/3 of the season, when he was solidly on course for the World Championship, Piastri would be ranked higher. However, the disastrous Baku weekend, when he crashed in both qualifying and the race, later admitting to pushing too hard, proved a turning point. Subsequent struggles at low-grip tracks, as well as shunts in consecutive sprint races in the USA and Brazil, meant he lost the points lead and ultimately couldn't quite get it back. Alarming as the final third of his season was, it doesn't change how impressive he was before that. His tally of 7 Grand Prix wins would have been higher but for missed opportunities such as Silverstone, where he was penalised for safety car restart shenanigans, Hungary, where he would have won but for the less favoured strategy, letting teammate Lando Norris defeat him, and Qatar, where the pit wall cost him certain victory. This was still a good season for Piastri, but his drop-off late in the year stopped it being great. 4th, Lando Norris. The new World Champion season is a fascinating example of how knee-jerk reactions to each race can only tell you so much before the full picture has materialised. Judged on the first third of the year, for example, Norris would likely be further down this ranking. Judged on the final third, he'd have a stronger case of being right at the top. But judged on the whole, It's a season of progress, of incredible peaks and searing speed, and some underlying weaknesses that still need to be addressed. There were too many self-described embarrassments early on when Norris was his own worst enemy, so in judging his overall season it was far from perfect. It was good enough to be world champion though, and it's very impressive how he learned from his struggles, adapted his driving on track and his approach off it, and kept the mistakes to a minimum as the season progressed, especially when it counted most. Third, Charles Leclerc. Leclerc went into 2025 hoping finally to get the championship shot he craves, but instead it turned into a season spent heroically battling to give Ferrari respectability. Leclerc's performances were, aside from in wet conditions where Ferrari has long struggled badly with tyres, generally outstanding. He bagged 7 podium finishes, scored consistently well, and was rarely seriously threatened by new teammate Hamilton. What he lacked was the opportunity to regularly test himself right at the sharp end, given the Ferrari was so rarely even on the periphery of the victory fight. Perhaps most impressively, he hauled the Ferrari onto the front row of the grid 5 times, which was far more than it deserved. In fact, a driver of Leclerc's class was far more than Ferrari deserved in 2025. Second, George Russell. Russell was the only driver who made fewer significant errors than Verstappen in 2025 as he put together his most impressive F1 season so far. Victories in Canada and Singapore were the highlights, but he also produced a strong body of work that ensured he was in a class of his own as the heaviest point scorer outside of McLaren and Verstappen. As you'd expect, he mostly had a clear advantage over rookie teammate Antonelli. But what really stood out is that even his worst weekends, Monaco where he failed to score, Silverstone where an overly bold gamble on slicks ruined his race, and Brazil where he was comprehensively outperformed by Antonelli, was still perfectly respectable. And the majority of events were strong. There's no doubt he's ready to fight for the championship. He just needs the car. First, Max Verstappen. When Max Verstappen claimed in Qatar that he'd have long since wrapped up the title were he in a McLaren, it was difficult to argue with him. He's our unanimous choice as the number 1 driver of 2025. He highlights his loss of control in the Spanish Grand Prix, hitting Russell's Mercedes and earning a penalty that turned 5th on the road into 10th as the one point of criticism. There were other blemishes such as spinning at the restart of the British Grand Prix, the off in Qatar sprint qualifying, and an underwhelming Hungary weekend for the whole team, but no driver extracted the potential of the machinery anything like as consistently as Verstappen did in terms of combining razor-sharp pace with execution. That kept him in the title hunt all the way to Abu Dhabi, which was overachieving in the tricky and erratic Red Bull.
Formula 1 has held its first collective 2026 test. Sort of. The 10 current teams stayed behind in Abu Dhabi to run a mule car each, simulating next year's downforce levels, trialling the actual 2026 tyres, and running some curious experimental items. Combined with the young driver portion of the test, there were 25 drivers on track in total across the day, 15 of whom will actually be racing next year, including Isaac Hadjar getting used to his new surroundings at Red Bull Racing, and his Racing Bull successor and F1 rookie, Arvid Lindblad. Cadillac and its drivers weren't included, as this test forms part of the current season, and they wouldn't be allowed to bring along the 2023 Ferrari that they've been privately testing. So they've missed out on some valuable early 2026 running, and make no mistake, the 2026 elements meant this was way more important than the traditional postseason test. Pirelli's mule car program developing the 2026 tyres has been rumbling away in the background all year, with 12 two-day sessions across 8 circuits, before the final day in Abu Dhabi after the season finale. This one was more significant though. It's the first time that all the current teams have been brought together, and so we were able to learn plenty. We got our first look at some prototypes simulating the kind of movable front wing system that will be used in F1 next season. Next year, the all-new 2026 cars will feature active aerodynamics on both the front and rear wings to reduce drag on the straights. That aero profile is being approximated on the mule cars by only using wing levels that were raced at Monza this year, and using the rear wing drag reduction system on more than just the normal long straights that are designated as DRS zones on race weekends. But in 2026, the front and rear wings will be opened whenever a car is in a part of a track designated by the FIA as not being traction limited, and we got the first taste of that in Abu Dhabi. Permission was given to teams to develop a system that could reduce the angle of attack of the uppermost element of the current front wings to use in the test, to simulate the opening we'll see next year. It provides the teams and Pirelli with an initial estimate on the impact of drag levels and tyre load impacts to compare. Mercedes ran a slightly crude design on Kimi Antonelli's mule car in the test, with an actuation system on the upper elements of the front wing, connected via large tubing to an internal system housed within the nose cone. Ferrari had a much more refined version on display. It has already developed a system that was used in Pirelli's private mule car testing, so it was unsurprisingly more subtle, the actuator on the front wing being connected by what looks like a carbon stem tucked neatly behind the wing and feeding back under the nose cone. This created the novelty of seeing front wings being opened on straights for the first time. But the systems are basic, and the real thing in 2026 will be quite different. For starters, a much bigger part of the front wing will move, as teams can choose between opening the top 1 or 2 elements of the wing, and they can decide between a hydraulic or electric actuator. Another experimental element in the Abu Dhabi test related to wheel rims that have been standardised since 2022. While the mule car running has largely been conducted on adapted versions by the standard supplier, next year teams will have more freedoms with the designs, and in Abu Dhabi they were permitted to conduct a limited number of runs with a wheel rim similar to what they'll use in 2026. McLaren was initially believed to be the only team to bring its own wheel rims to this test, but then Williams appeared with exposed wheels, without the covers we've been accustomed to in the current rules era.
Today's video is brought to you by Rover.
When Ferrari and Mercedes were running their experimental front wing design, they had an unusual advantage over the other 8 teams. They didn't have to conform to a speed limit on the straights. A 300km/h straight line speed limit was imposed on the mule cars for this test, but not because there was any fear of them falling apart or anything like that. It fits with Pirelli's method through the entire mule car program of using the DRS on the rear wing on most straights wherever possible. In Abu Dhabi, this meant that instead of being restricted to using the DRS zones on the 2 long back straights, drivers in the mule cars could also use the DRS on the start-finish straight and on the run from the exit of turn 2 to the turn 5 hairpin. But the normal mule cars only have the usual DRS on the rear wing, so when that is activated, there is a disproportionate amount of load on the front axle. When the real 2026 active aero works, both wings will back off into low drag mode, so there will be significantly reduced load on both axles. The speed limit helps balance out the load more between the 2 axles, because the faster the current ground effect cars travel, the more aggressive the loading is. If you only activate the DRS on the rear wing, that causes a big balance shift and overloads the front axle. While it may seem trivial on the straights, tyre temperatures can still change a huge amount. In Baku, for example, on the long run from the final real corner to turn 1, front tyre temperatures drop more than 30 degrees, and this will be even greater with the 2026 active aerodynamics on the front wing. So running the test with this speed limit gave the teams and Pirelli slightly more useful data on how the 2026 tyres would behave on the real thing. This group test was a significant conclusion to the 2026 mule car program, even though the final specification of the tyres had been signed off for some time in terms of both construction and compound. Although the FIA's homologation deadline is not until next week, the early confirmation is because of the need to produce and ship the tyres not only for the test, but also pre-season running and the early races next year. This test is useful for Pirelli to evaluate its choices, but Pirelli's motorsport director Mario Isola argues this test is more important for the teams, given it gives them all the chance to sample the definitive 26 tyres as part of their preparations for next year. Teams will be able to compare the performance of the final product to both their previous experience over the past 14 months of testing the evolving prototype tyres, and how it correlates with the virtual tyre model Pirelli provides them with. They will also be able to understand how the contact patch, the part of the tyre that is touching the track surface but varies constantly with load, behaves, and other characteristics of the narrower tyres. These are not simply a scaled down version of the 2025 tyres, because the change in size has necessitated a complete redesign. In the earlier 2026 tyre tests, Pirelli decided the run plans, but in Abu Dhabi, teams had free rein to do what they want, which amplifies how much they can learn even further. While the tyre test is useful to the teams, it falls a long way short of how useful it would be to run using the as yet non-existent 2026 cars. The mule cars are not anything like the real cars that will race next year, simply a best possible approximation using current spec machinery. By F1 standards, they are a make and do botch job. While Abu Dhabi is not a maximum downforce track, the change in configuration means significantly reduced downforce levels compared to the Grand Prix weekend. The lap times reflected this, with the fastest mule car time a 1 minute 20. The change in configuration means significantly reduced downforce levels compared to the Grand Prix weekend. The lap times reflected this, with the fastest mule car time a 1 minute 25.170 set by Mercedes driver Antonelli. That's 1.4 seconds slower than the fastest time of the test itself, set by Aston Martin young driver Jack Crawford in a normal 2025 car, 2.5 seconds slower than the best Mercedes qualifying time, which was the closest deficit of all 10 teams in the test compared to the race weekend, given the average deficit was 3.93 seconds. Now, it's fair to say that Antonelli's lap wasn't a no-holds-barred qualifying simulation, but it is at least roughly in keeping with the ballpark performance loss recently suggested by FIA single-seater director Nicholas Tombazis of being in the region of 1 or 2 seconds off the current cars. However, lap time is a one-dimensional metric. Williams team principal James Vowles says the mule cars are just too far away to give a clear read on 2026 with the real work done in the simulator. That's because aero balance characteristics of the mule cars will not be a fair representation of the actual 2026 cars. The ride will be different given the 26 ride heights will be higher and mechanical characteristics of the suspension changed, plus the endless tiny details that aggregate to define the performance, feel and behaviour of a car will all be off. For the drivers, it's also of limited use, as they used outgoing power units. This means that crucial elements of driving the 2026 cars, such as managing the energy recovery systems and modifying the driving technique to maximise harvesting potential, was off the table. None of this means the test was a waste of time. The mule cars have at least given teams some real-world tyre data to assimilate into their models before the first.
Yo, what's up?
Waste of time. The mule cars have at least given teams some real-world tyre data.